Hello, I'm Johannah I, Stations Advisor, podcaster and aspiring innovator.
And I'm Liam Henderson, Transport Planner and Chair of the Rail Innovation Group.
And today we are in Brighton, or more specifically Ovingdean, at Blind Veterans UK. And you might wonder why we're here today.
I think our listeners will be curious why we're here today.
It's because they have been involved in a project to test an autonomous vehicle for the use of people with visual impairments. Now, Blind Veterans UK was founded by Sir Arthur Pearson as an organisation that supported those who were blinded in the First World War in 1915, and they have been involved in the rehabilitation of servicemen ever since, and more specifically at their site in Ovingdean, where they provide training and activities and convalescent opportunities for blind veterans. I think you've got some statistics for us.
I do have some statistics.
Because I think, actually, before we go on to statistics, let's just sort of talk a little, just for a couple of seconds, about our own views about autonomy and where we think it's going, because I think we've had a previous discussion about this. I am firmly in the it's brilliant and it's going to happen camp, and you are?
In the dubious. Well, as a cyclist, I'm a cyclist, so I autonomy on the road, I struggle to see it happen.
So, and why do you struggle?
Because having cycled following you from Brighton Station to here, I certainly couldn't predict and judge what you were going to do, and I don't think a autonomous vehicle is ever going to be able to cope with cyclists. I think autonomous vehicles will work in controlled spaces. I don't think on the open highway they can work with full autonomy.
Well, because I kind of take the other view to that, because I actually think that I don't necessarily think it's going to happen in my lifetime. In the next.
How long do you think you got left?
I don't know. We were talking yesterday about climate change and 2050, and I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be 80 in 2050.
Work that back from there.
And actually, that's interesting itself, being blind veterans, because at 80 it could be something that I could be interested in, is autonomy, and I don't. But I think one of the reasons why I think it's going to happen is because if you rewind 150 years, when with the invention of the car, everybody was scared of the car, and we had an act in the UK called the Red Flag Act, where somebody used to walk in front of a combustion engine car with a red flag, because people were scared of them, and I think we're almost at that stage with autonomy in terms of generalised use, is that people need to take a trust leap. And the reason why I say a trust leap is because, as ever, I always sort of do a bit of reading in advance, and I've not read these books recently. I read these last year, and one of them was written by a very well-known academic. She teaches at the Oxford Said Business School, a lady called Rachel Botsman, and she wrote a book called Who Can You Trust? And then also a book about autonomy, The Quest to Build the Driverless Car and How It Will Reshape Our World, by Lawrence Burns. And he was the head of R&D at General Motors during the Dhaka Challenge, and did a lot of work in autonomy, and he's been working with Waymo and everything that. And there are two things that stand out from both of these books for me. One is the fact that all through our history, it requires us to take a leap of faith, to move from uncertain truths to the certainty of what that gives us. And I think that's what happened with the car. And so as people realise that you can't, what's the point of having a car if you're going to make somebody walk in front of it? You're not getting the benefit of it. So then people started becoming more confident in the technology, and they started making that leap of faith as they became more aware, thinking, I can trust this, I feel confident in it. And I think that will happen with autonomy. And then I think the other thing, which is the same with the book by Lawrence Burns, is about the cost and the benefit to society. Because if you go back to, you can look online at photos in New York in 1919, or even before then, before the invention of the Ford T motor car, was that cars were not affordable. So one, you had cars not affordable, and two, they had a huge problem with horse manure in New York. So they had to solve a problem to it, and car was the solution to that. And that's why I think that we will start making those trust leaps, because we'll find the benefit of using them. We have a problem with the amount of cars on our road and the congestion they charge and what they do to the climate. And they've in Lawrence Burns's book, he's done an estimation that there'll be an 85% saving in the amount of vehicles on our road, so we can repurpose space in our cities, but also the cost will just make it viable, in the same way that the Ford T did.
Okay, I'm going to go back to your image of 1919 on the roads in New York, and if you look at an oldie street from the first photos, you can see a mixed use on the street. People selling stuff, people walking down the middle of the street, trams going down the middle of the street, horses going down the middle of the street, and the start of cars. Now, cars can go much faster than everybody else, so they started hitting people and killing people. The car industry lobby at that point knew it had a problem, and so then lobbied to get road space designated as for cars only, vehicles only. And all of those shared spaces disappeared. All of that societal space disappeared. Now, at the moment, well, until say 10 years ago, only cyclists were allowed to share that space with motor cars. So we lost all of that space. Within about the last 10 years, we've been trying to fight for it back with shared spaces, and there's been a lot of conflict with regard to who has right of way. The issue with driverless cars, autonomous vehicles, is that for them to work how people will be able to program them to work, you need everything on that road space to be autonomous and to talk to each other. So you're then having to exclude probably cyclists as well, and you're just going back to the system where they have priority on the highways. And in an urban area, are you going to put all the guardrailing back up to stop people playing on the streets, playing on the side of the streets? I happen to live on a play street, and legally, between the hours of sunrise and sunset, you're not allowed to park there, and you're not allowed to drive down it without a reason, and it's for children to play on. So there's many impacts of just driving towards autonomous, because I think it's a can of worms we haven't understood fully yet. We haven't even started talking about liability if they hit people, who writes the code for if they hit people. And you mentioned emissions. There's nothing to stop all the vehicles that you see down there on the street being electric.
No.
It's not autonomy that's going to make that happen. Now, I see there being levels of autonomy, sort of on the motorway. You have already, we've had cruise control forever, and we probably will move to a level of autonomous vehicles. But in an urban area, and where you're mixing different modes and bringing that chaos in, humans have had however many 100,000 years to predict what other humans will do.
But why do you think humans are better at it than machines?
Because someone has to write a code and stick with that code through the courts to say that when someone does that, this is the outcome. And I don't think that you can ever write that. It depends on the time of day, the mood. Can you see that they have had drinks? Is there a small child playing?
Because I think one of your examples of your street being a play street, why does that need to change because you've got autonomy? It just becomes an area where an autonomous vehicle, the rule stays the same. The autonomous vehicle just doesn't go down that street.
But the autonomous vehicle may go down that street if it's dropping someone off or picking someone up. But
it can't do that today, so why does it have to change in the future?
Because at the moment it is officially designated as a play street, and the only people allowed to drive on it legally are people going to a property on that street.
Oh, I see.
It's not a through road during sunrise to sunset.
I mean, but I just sort of like keep you on that safety. And I think what's from the Lawrence Burns book, he says there are 1.3 million fatalities a year in the US, which is significantly more than the UK. Because UK is about 1,700, but he reckons that autonomy will allow us to cut fatalities by 90%, which is a huge number. And he thinks that we'll cut dependency on oil, and we'll erase the challenges of parking because we'll be going to a different service model, and it will allow us to reshape our cityscapes. And you've already touched on that in the sense that the thoughts that we have to think about. Are we separating space? Can we bring back shared spaces? Because I just want to go back to the fact that in their calculations that they've done, because we'll be going to different service models, and we will get mobility as a service, and we won't have ownership. He thinks that the number of cars, just by going to shared autonomous hiring models, will cut the number of cars on the roads by 85%.
So
that is
significant.
Because if you think where we're stood, where we're sat along the coast, there's not huge traffic. But if you just sat here a couple of hours ago, it would have been traffic jammed along the coastal road, because it's the only way you can get into Brighton along the coast. But
on that topic, though,
most of those cars wouldn't be there if we were autonomous. So could we have a better walking space, a better cycling space as a result of that being cut out? And you'd only need one lane, for example.
But you say that, but let's go back to congestion in London, for example. It's gone up recently, and at the moment the perfect model for mobility as a service is Uber. Dial it on your phone, it comes, picks you up, takes you exactly where you want to go. The introduction of Uber has massively increased the number of vehicles on the streets of London and other cities around the country. So you're saying that when you bring in an even more convenient mode, where you don't have to worry about parking in the city centre, there'll be less cars?
Well, you have to also it comes back to that leap as well, that trust leap again.
But as soon as you introduce that convenience, nobody's going to take a bus in future, because they can just get in their little pod.
But the Uber will have gone, because the Uber will now become the autonomous vehicle.
Yes, but and adding in, it will be cheaper because you don't have to pay for a driver. Why on earth would I ever take a bus or a train?
I think there's an interesting.
I
know you are. I know, and I think it's right that you are, because these are big things that have to be thought about. But who says that buses will still be here in the future? Question mark. I know
people who need access to opportunity.
But if you can provide autonomy cheaper than a bus, because how much are buses like rail, where they're running around empty half the time? It's because it's interesting. We're in Brighton as well, because in Brighton more people use buses than London every day, and we've just seen a bus go past, not the coach, but one of my local bus, the number 27, which goes from Brighton Station practically right outside my house. You get on it in the morning or the evening, and it's packed, and it's just gone past here. Top deck is virtually empty. And that will be the same everywhere. And that's, and then when you take it out of urban areas, like the big areas like London and also Brighton and big cities like Bristol and Manchester, bus services are being cut back on. And the thing about, you take the driver out of the equation and provide personal autonomy, that provides more opportunities to provide people with transport options, because I think
it does, so long as the people who rely on currently a bus service are somehow subsidised for this mobility. If it's a private operator, they won't be able to afford.
But the subsidy isn't happening at the moment, and I think this will lead nicely into why we're particularly at the blind veterans, is because my husband and I, we've recently moved back to Brighton. We've been back in Brighton 18 months, and we lived in Oakham before.
Where Johannah's patisserie was.
It has a poor train service. It only has an hourly train service that starts first train 6:15 in the morning, last train 8 o'clock in the evening. So you're not going anywhere on that train unless you travel between those hours, which makes it virtually impossible to do anything in London that isn't between 9 and 5, because that's the only way to. And then if you then drill down to people that want to go to college or to school or to take hospital appointments in Leicester and that, they were cutting back bus services despite subsidies from the local authority, and because of current government cutbacks, they were cutting those services back because the local authority couldn't afford to subsidise the local bus services. And this is happening all over the country, because they're just not economical. So does this provide a new opportunity? And the thing is that young people are no longer learning to drive. That's been reduced by 30%. But equally, the people that rely on local bus services are the elderly, the infirm, the people that can't drive, people who are visually impaired, and these are quite significant statistics. And I think you've got those here, haven't you?
I do. I have from the NHS that 2 million people in the UK are visually impaired. 360,000 are officially classed as blind. So those people wouldn't be allowed to drive their own car. And then I thought what was another interesting statistic is that only 76% of households in England have access to a car or a van.
So that is 24% of people not having access to transport.
Yeah.
Is quite a significant
and we're going
statistic.
To talk to Deb about that in our next future podcast.
And so there are 24% of people that need access to some other form of transport. And that is probably money that should not be sniffed at in terms of opportunities for transport providers.
Yes.
Yeah, and we should be looking at. So now we're going to go and have a go on the autonomous vehicle, I think.
Yes.
On Arthur.
We're not quite sure how it's going to work, but we're going to try and do some sort of podcast recording whilst on the Arthur vehicle. I'm not sure where it goes, but there is warning signs around. So let's take a pause there and jump on the vehicle. So we're now going to get on Arthur. First of all, is if you are visually impaired, how do you get in?
Oh, that's an interesting question. How do you get in if you're visually impaired? Because it's quite a big step up.
And also, do you press a button to open the door?
We do, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So press the button.
Press the button. I'll pretend to press the button, shall I? Does it make a noise when you press it?
It does.
Oh, there you go. Oh, you've closed it now.
I almost got hit.
We're off to a good start, so let's press
Well, the door was already open, but you told me to press the button. So I was doing as I was told.
Get in. Right.
So now we're in.
Okay, we're in, Arthur, and we're joined.
And we have to put seatbelts on?
Yes, please.
Do we? Okay.
So
we have a friend in the vehicle with us, and his name is
Ricky.
Ricky. He
Hi,
looks
Ricky.
so pleased that we're recording this podcast.
It's fine. So I was just filling out your forms. So basically, I just got to read this short passage to you, just about what's going to happen next, and then we go on a little journey, and then when we get back, we just ask you a few questions about your experience.
excellent.
Okay. So this is Arthur. Arthur is an autonomous pod, and you'll be taking part in a research trial.
Perfect.
I'm super excited about this.
So
So you actually look as though you've got a Nintendo.
Xbox remote.
Xbox remote.
God, go with it. So
Oh,
we're
no,
off. So Ricky is actually driving this with an Xbox console.
Okay, I'm just going to
Sorry,
reset
we've got
back to the
seatbelts.
start line. So I didn't
Alright.
check something before we started.
Oh, is this because you messed up the door?
No. Well, it's a bit jerky, isn't it?
So I've taken it from.
Oh, right, okay. So
Wow.
we're now going backwards.
Via remote control.
No, I don't think so. So I was talking to someone on the outside.
Alright. Presumably, though, in a future situation, you'd have already pressed your destination rather than get in and expect to have to.
Is that what would
Control,
happen? I don't know. Is that what would happen? Is that you'd put your destination in and
So
it would just automatically track it?
In the future, it's most likely going to work very similar to an Uber app.
Okay. So you'd have chosen in advance.
Yeah, generally speaking. Yeah.
But this is just testing, isn't it? Because
Yeah, so
how old are these vehicles now?
So they've been in development for a couple of years. So this is pod number 15.
15.
Yeah,
And
Arthur.
is this one of the original ones from the Transport Systems Catapult?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
Sort
were
of the
developed
same
in Milton
project.
Keynes? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So same vehicle. So obviously it's been updated since then. Gradually they implement new things. Obviously now and again things do go wrong, like a computer needs rebooting.
No
But
problem.
that's why they research and development vehicles are not fully fledged fleet vehicles.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, so we're going on our little journey. I've already read you your thingy, and we're being recorded.
So you're just. Are you actively controlling this now, or just pressing stop and go?
No, so I have what they call a dead man's handle. So I just basically have to hold a button down to say that I'm concentrating.
Yeah.
And I just have to keep an eye and make sure the vehicle is behaving how it should.
So I'd already mentioned as well that we do also have the equivalent of the red flag man in front of us as well, with his yellow vest on. Making sure that as we go down the road we're not getting in the way of any vehicles or people. But we are on the private site of the Blind Veterans UK site, so we're not actually going live onto a road. We're just within a private space. So what speed are we travelling at the moment?
Somewhere around 4 or 5 miles an hour. So just above walking speed.
And is that what you imagine for the blind veterans?
For this sort of area, because obviously it's an enclosed area, it's not masses of space. You've got the visually impaired wandering around, and they don't always use the path. They do like to walk up the road because there's steps on the path. So sometimes it's easier for them to use the road to walk up. And also we have traffic that doesn't always stick to the 5 miles an hour speed limit. So it's just best if it's more controlled in these sorts of areas and the speed is appropriate to the surroundings.
And from your time here, have you noticed whether people move out of the way of the vehicle or the vehicle stops?
There's a mixture. Obviously it depends on what's happening at the time, but sometimes the people wait for us and sometimes we wait for the people.
Okay. But presumably it won't hit somebody.
I would like to hope not ever, because obviously that would be the end of the project, and it would be the end of most autonomous vehicles if something like that happens. I mean, Uber have been struggling since they had their incident. So.
But they use different technology, don't they?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Because what's the technology behind this vehicle in terms of making sure that it stays out of the way of objects, shall we say?
Do you mean hazards more than
Yeah,
objects?
hazards. Yeah.
So the easiest way to probably explain it is so we use a mixture of different technologies, and we take proven technologies and then we apply them in a slightly new way. So we've got a mixture of LiDARs, ultrasonics, GPS, and stereoscopic cameras, and so basically the pod uses that to build up a 3D world. And then when we go to a new area, we would map the area using all those devices, and then we would give it rules of where it can and can't go and what it can do, and then it plans its own routes and trajectories in the conditions that we set.
Right, and currently we're off-road.
It feels like we're off-road.
We are off-road, we're actually on a field. Yeah.
And it felt like it as well.
So in this part of the track, they've put some like grid netting down that they use for car parks or areas that they don't want to remove the grass, or they want to use that land for the drainage as well.
Yeah.
So just a small area of that gridding, because it spreads the weight. It's like traffic gridding.
Which means that these can potentially go beyond just the highway network.
Actually, this is classed as off-highway because it's not a main road. It's private land, so this is still off-highway, even though the car park area is still off-highway. All our projects are currently off-highway.
But in a future situation, these can sort of go... Well, they don't need to be just where there's tarmac.
No. They could go on something like gridding. You wouldn't really want to go off-roading in it. It's not built like a 4x4. But.
Now we are going incredibly slow. So what is the top speed of
So these vehicles at the moment, their potential is about 20 miles an hour, which is more than fast enough for this first and last mile applications that we use these vehicles for, or that they will be used for in the future. So just small journeys that are very, very repetitive, like at airports or in city centres, rather than having congested roads. You could have a whale of pods, as we're calling them, transporting people around from like travel connectivity centres like your railway stations or your bus stations, etc.
Sorry, just to clarify, groups of these are now going to be called whales.
Whales of pods, yeah.
I love it.
Who came up with that idea of whales of pods? That is great.
I think a load of people were just in the office one day and it kind of slipped out by someone and it's kind of stuck at the moment.
So is that is a new whale of pods?
Yeah.
So we won't call them autonomous.
Or fleets,
It'll be a whales of pods.
Whales of pods.
Love it. And last question is, how long does the battery for this last?
So there's a couple of different battery designs. So the first one is lead acid. That's what this is running on, and it's a range of about 40 kilometres, depending on gradient, 30 to 40 kilometres. And then we've got lead acid, the lithium batteries. So one of the lithium batteries that we would put in this vehicle, and it would have a total of 3, holds the same charge as the 6 lead acid batteries are in it now. So you're tripling that. So if you go over to lead acid, you're looking at depending if you've got aircon and things like that, roughly 120 to 150 kilometres.
Which is perfectly good
which is about the same range as my electric bicycle.
Which you were nipping around on earlier. Okay, thank you very much for having us.
That was great fun.
It was. Good experience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I'm still attached to you.
You're still attached. Come on, get out, get out.
So we've been round on the vehicle. And now we're going to be asked some questions about our experience of it by the lead. Sophia, would you just like to introduce yourself to yourself and also to the research that you've been doing?
So my name is Theo and I work for Blind Veterans UK. I'm a innovations and translational scientist, and I'm project managing Arthur, which is the autonomous vehicle trial that is taking place at our centre in Brighton. And now we're going to go through some questions for a survey that we conduct at the end of the journey with every passenger.
Okay, that's great. Just before we go on to the survey, because we were just having a great chat, because you've a little bit of a chat, because you've been doing this research project for a while, and you were saying that you've had some good feedback already from the centre residents. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Not just the centre residents, is the people that have been on the vehicle. We have had some initial data, which we are not allowed to share publicly, but we can say that the feedback is positive.
That's really great, because we were having the debate earlier about the use case of different types of autonomy, because I'm very much in the pro and Liam is very much in the sceptical camp.
Sceptical, not ruling it out, just sceptical. How have you found sort of the interest in the whole project?
From?
Everybody, anybody, like are
so
people excited to see them outside?
The project was initiated because what the members were was saying to what they miss the most from when they were not visually impaired is that they say that they were able to drive, and that's what made the whole project start.
Oh, okay, so it came from, it was inspired by people in the centre.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it is responding to a need.
It is.
Perfect.
Excellent.
It's all to do with the independence and the social and welfare.
That's great. Thank you ever so much
Thanks,
for letting us join you here today.
So Johannah, we're now back outside the centre. We've been on our roller coaster ride and answered our survey questions. I thought one of the most interesting things that we found out from the little questionnaire there was that this project was inspired by people at this centre who miss being able to drive. It was particularly being able to drive, and so this is, I mean, it's not going to make up for the fact that they can't drive, but it is responding to a particular challenge identified.
But is the need the not being able to drive, or the fact that they miss independence? Because that's what driving gives you, isn't it? Is that it's the ability to be able to decide, right, okay, I'm going out for the day, or I'm just going to nip to the shops, or I'm going to work. It opens up a world of opportunities to you, which if you're reliant on public transport and timetables doesn't necessarily give you.
Yes, but particularly being able to driving is also feeling in control. You like to rev an engine, you like to drive up hills or down hills, and it's more exciting. Sitting on that vehicle was in no way exciting, and you kept saying how slow it was. So I'm not sure whether it would give you the same feeling. It would give you the same output, the independence, but not the same sort of feeling of you on the open road.
But it's interesting, that human factor of why do we like cars? I don't know how many genuine petrol heads there are out there, because I learnt to drive in my mid-30s, so 17 years of my adult life I didn't drive, and that was because I lived in an urban area. I didn't want to learn to drive because I'm not a petrol head. So I do come at it from a very different view, and I wonder how many people actually genuinely really do like driving, or actually they just like the independence of being able to drive. And that's why I learned to drive, because I moved to an area where public transport wasn't so there wasn't so much of it. So I'd moved from the southeast London to the country, and there was again, a news item this morning about how terrible transport is in the north of England. We're talking conurbations around Manchester and stuff like that. And it's that independence of being, and in some ways it's a basic human right, just about being able to live your life, about being able to go to college, about being able to go to work, and the driving is the enabler.
Yes.
It's not really what we want to do. I wonder truly, when you drill down into people and their needs and that, do they really want to drive, or is it just the power and the in control and the independence it gives them?
And convenience. And
convenience, yes. Which is all that control, and that's really what we want from cars. And I think, and I know there are. I've got friends who love their cars. I've got a neighbour. he has 3 cars. And I only ever see him drive one, but every Sunday he brings the other 2 out and gives them a nice polish and that, because he loves his sports cars. And going back to our analogy, or my analogy, with the Ford T in New York at the 100 years ago, is that I wonder how much as autonomy develops and as it becomes more affordable and the use cases developed and people realise that, or not even people realise, but the need is met, for people like the visually impaired and the people who can no longer drive because of disabilities or epilepsy or whatever that is that cars will become a bit like horses, where they become a sport and people do it as a hobby rather than being the way that we use the main use for getting around.
Okay.
Or self-drive, or not, cars that we drive ourselves become like that rather than self-driving cars.
Yes. I still have some thoughts about another of my reservations about future. In the future ideal, I know I've said this on a previous podcast about mobility as a service, you have an autonomous vehicle that comes and picks you up. As we now know, they're called whales of pods, will come and pick you up. Everyone I know who owns a car, half of the reason they seem to own a car is to cart around loads of stuff in the boot of the car or in the back seats. And I also wonder how people are going to adapt, or will they adapt, to not having all their stuff with them all the time. Because I obviously cycle and I take the train, so I'm just used to having a backpack and a minimised amount of things. But if you have young children, you've got a load of shopping, you've got spare things just in case, you've got stuff that needs to go to the dump at some point when you get round to driving via the dump, you've got a pushchair probably. Are we expecting people to adapt that much, that quickly to that?
Well, I think that illustrates, how things, how many things need to change if autonomy is to have an application. There are many ways in our lives that will need to change, but humans do adapt, don't they? Because if you take taxis, for example, taxis were required by law to carry hay with them. And obviously that was to feed the horse. Right. But obviously cars don't, or mechanised taxis don't need hay, so they no longer carry hay with them. And I think we get used to carrying stuff around with us, but I come from a generation where it wasn't. Not everybody in the streets had a car. That sort of came in the 80s, and used to carry stuff, but there'll be a whole new industry of other things that will happen. So, when I was at HS2, we did a thought piece on autonomous vehicles, and some of the areas we were looking at was Japan for the Tokyo Olympics, and there has been something in the news about the electric vehicles they're going to be using, and what they have been looking at is a family of autonomy. So it's not just about the actual vehicle that you travel in, but also about the stuff that you will also take with you as part of that autonomy. So for example, they were looking at how would autonomous wheelchairs fit into autonomous vehicles. How would autonomous cases or carriers or whatever fit into autonomous...
Trunky, can I take my trunky on it?
But there's no reason why in the future trunky wouldn't be autonomous. They are already starting to develop.
You asked me if I felt safe on that thing. I'm not sure I'd feel safe on an autonomous trunky whizzing around the airport.
I think we're a bit too big for trunkies though, aren't we?
No, they're not with the grown-up version.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? We are still a long way off, because today was very much still about a trial.
Yeah, it's a very extremely controlled trial. There was also, if you've noticed, that we have not encountered actually any of the target demographic for these vehicles.
No. But I think the research is interesting, and really that's how you get innovation, by just keep testing, keep developing the use cases, keeping at those, pushing those boundaries, because that's what Ford did.
You love this Ford Model T, don't you?
I actually saw one at Brighton Marina a few months ago. I was amazed, 'cause I'd never seen one in real life. And just to see it there. Although it did look as though it needed a bit of TLC, because it was very rusty. But it was amazing to see.
Okay, right, now just before we leave Brighton, considering I normally come up with the fun fact or the interesting piece of information, tell us a fun fact about Brighton.
Well, I've already told you my fun fact about Brighton, in the fact that more people use buses in Brighton.
It's not a fun fact. That's a transport fact. I want to know a fun fact about Brighton.
A fun fact about Brighton. Oh God. There's a bar called Fitzwilliam's in the centre that's named after George III's mistress. I think it was George III's mistress.
Okay. Well, that is an acceptable fun fact. Now we know. Now we know a head for after this. Right. So, from the Blind Veterans UK, Thanks for listening to us, and see you next time, Johannah.
See you next time, Liam.